This video is brought to you with support from my patrons on Patreon. Hey everybody, it's Jimmy from the DIY and Digital, and it's time for the 2020 Model Railroad Christmas Guide. Welcome back everybody. First of all, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that bell icon so that you don't miss any updates like this video. So it is my annual Christmas guide. This is my third one that I've done, and I've got a lot of things to cover, talking about getting ready to buy stuff for the model railroader, or if you are a model railroader looking for a few things to go ahead and take a look at real quick. That's what this guide is for. If you want to know how to buy for the model railroader in your life, you can check out my 2018 guide where I do a lot of explaining with that. I'll link that right up here as well as in the description below. So let's get started. So a lot of you may be looking at this video and you may be saying, I'm looking for a Christmas themed train that I can put around my Christmas tree or somewhere set up in my house during the season. So if you're looking for that, there are several scales that you're going to look at. You're going to look at HO, N, and O scale, and we're going to talk about those here really quick. The biggest variety you're going to see are from two main companies, and that's going to be from Bachmann and Lionel. We're going to start off with Bachmann. They have a lot of sets that you can look at. Specifically, you have the Thomas Christmas Delivery set in HO scale. You have the North Pole Express in HO scale. You have the Spirit of Christmas in N scale, the Merry Christmas Express in N scale, and then you have the Norman Rockwell's American Christmas in ON30, which is O scale narrow gauge. Then you have the Village Streetcar in N scale and the Jingle Bell Express in HO. Shifting over to Lionel, Lionel has O scale and G scale, and we're also going to talk about their new HO scale stuff that they've really been rolling out recently, but we're going to talk about that later. But specifically, I actually want to start on Lionel's G scale, which is definitely more of a toy G scale. It's all battery powered, but these sets are really inexpensive for the size of the train that you get. We actually have one of these that runs around our tree at Christmas time, and you can check those out in a link in the description below. And you also have all of Lionel's O scale stuff, including the Polar Express set, which they also offer in HO scale. So you want to check that out if you want something a little smaller. Remember, HO literally means half of O. So those are some things to check out from Lionel, as well as a lot of different themed rolling stock you can look at specifically for Christmas as well. A couple other companies that do this kind of stuff. Kato for N scale does the Operation North Pole set. It's like a Metra type passenger set. You can check that out. And of course, LGB does a lot of Christmas themed sets in G scale for your garden railroaders, and I think Bachmann has a couple as well. But if I'm buying a G scale garden railroad set, I'm probably going to go with an LGB just because they have that classic large scale Christmas train set. Alright, so now we're going to talk to someone who wants to buy something for someone who wants to start into model railroading. Specifically, we're going to talk about starter sets, and we're going to talk about N scale, HO scale, O scale, and G scale for the garden railroaders out there. So specifically in N scale, if you're looking for something that's just pretty much, it's meant for the starter, it's meant to be ready to go right out of the box, you want to go to Bachmann. They have a wide variety of them. If you're looking to spend a bit more money and get some more quality out of it, you want to look at Kato. Kato has some really nice starter sets as well. And the really cool thing about Kato is they have a whole track system, their Unitrack system, which is similar to Bachmann's Easy Track. They're not compatible, but they have a whole set of different expansions that you can buy that really isn't like anything else that there is in model railroading. So you can easily expand that starter set. So in scale, Bachmann or Kato are going to be the two places to look at for starter sets, and it really just comes down to preference. Kato's going to be high quality. Bachmann's going to be a little bit less expensive for those starter sets. Now let's talk about HO scale. Again, we're going to talk about Bachmann as well, and also Athearn makes some good starter sets as well. So those are going to be the two that you're going to check out, and it's really the same story as well for the HO as it is in the N scale. Now, if we're talking about O scale, there's really two things you can do here. The main one's going to be looking at Lionel, which is definitely going to be more of a toy train look. It's not going to be the perfect to scale, but there's nothing really wrong with them. They're actually great stuff to run. They've been around forever. I think if there's one model railroad manufacturer that the average person is going to know, it is going to be Lionel. And Lionel just has tons of starter sets, and you can even sometimes get them for under $200, which for trains that size is pretty impressive. And they have a whole ecosystem of track that is just built around their rolling stock and everything, and it's something that you really definitely want to check out if you're looking into O scale. Now, G scale, you really have actually 4 choices for starter sets. Of course, Bachmann, because Bachmann is a very large company, and yes, they make G scale starter sets. You also have companies like LGB, which has also been around for a long time. They're a German company, and they make starter sets. They make some of the classic starter sets in G scale that you have seen in the past. You may have seen, whether it's in some sort of Christmas movie with a large train running around the Christmas tree, or if it's in a restaurant running somewhere, you probably were seeing an LGB. 2 other companies that make starter sets are going to be Piko, that's P-I-K-O, not to be confused with Piko, P-E-C-O. So they make starter sets. And you also want to look at, if you really want to go for some quality, USA Trains. That's going to be your higher end of your starter sets. Those can run upwards of $500, but those are really high quality starter sets. So those are all the starter sets. So for this next part, I scoured a few websites looking around to figure out what was popular and some new stuff that was coming out in terms of new announcements that I have seen. There's probably some that have been missed. If you do not hear me say a special announcement that has been said, go ahead and put it in the comments below, so this can be a guide for 2020. But I'm going to start off with locomotives in terms of in-scale. Atlas GP39-2s, they announced those. Scale Trains announced some new GEVOs, and Kato announced some SD70Ms. So those are some things to look for. I'm not seeing a ton of Steam available, but that's not very uncommon for in scale, since it is a smaller scale and Steam can get a bit finicky at that size. Now, for HO scale, right now across all of the retail websites that I'm seeing Athearn is being very popular right now. When I click on something and it go to sort by most popular, it's almost always Athearn in terms of locomotives. And they've been doing a lot of announcements. They announced some SD70 ACUs on October 30th. They announced some GP39s on the September 25th, and they announced a new F unit on September 25th as well. And then Atlas also announced new Jeep 38 and new Jeep 40, so go ahead and check those out. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting, because I'm about to talk about somewhere that typically we don't think of for HO scale, and that is Lionel. So one thing that I've noticed is, and I think it's because they're harder to manufacture, and maybe because time is just moving further and further away from it, I'm seeing less and less Steam available. You know, there's companies like Broadway Limited that specialize a lot in Steam, but other than that, I'm not seeing too much. But I just happened to be scrolling through Lionel's website, and it may be where they are starting to maybe gun for that HO scale Steam market. And the reason I say that is because they now have 9 DCC Mikados that are available, and they're in various road names. You can go ahead and check them out on their Lionel website, but it looks like they're really expanding their HO offerings. And what I'm really seeing this right now is that they have a lot of rolling stock that's going to be, looks like it's designed to compete directly with Bachmann in terms of price. Now, first of all, I'm seeing the price for these Mikados, these 9 Mikados, at $290 for DCC and Bluetooth, and it has all those systems that Lionel has, and that's still a little steep for the retail price. I suspect that once they get into the stores, the price will go down, but the rolling stock is something that I am seeing that is where it gets interesting, because you're looking at stuff that's going to be probably like a Bachmann competitor, like the Silver Series competitor, and these are like $20 cars. And I think that's something very interesting to take a look at, that HO scale modelers really haven't probably taken a lot of notice of Lionel for their HO scale stuff. So it looks like they're definitely ramping up their HO scale production, and also they have DCC sets with their own proprietary track for HO scale for about $350. So another set you can actually check out. I didn't put that with my original HO scale sets just because they are relatively new, even though it's Lionel. So, but if you're looking for a DCC set, might want to check out Lionel for HO scale. O scale, you're not looking at really a ton of new releases, but you are looking at still a bunch from Lionel as always, and there's still some stuff coming in from MTH. They're still doing releases. I'm not sure what their status is because I haven't kept up with it ever since they announced the change of their operations this year. But those are really what you're going to be looking at for O scale. And also remember that Lionel owns American Flyer, so if you're an S scaler, always check out their website for that as well. And then I'll also talk about Z scale. Z scale, American Z line, looks like they have a lot of new RS3s. Very cool looking. They have that classic Southern RS3 like the one that I run there, and they have it in Z scale. And definitely worth checking out. And I haven't seen a lot of new stuff in G scale, so it looks like the companies are just kind of sticking with what they have been manufacturing. So those are the products that I have seen just by browsing around. If you've seen some stuff that I haven't mentioned that is interest of you, put it in the comments below. So now we're going to talk about something that I really enjoy as part of this hobby, and model railroaders are really starting to dip their toes in and test the water on. That is 3D printing. And I have a whole guide for 3D printing and model railroading. I'll link that right up here as well as in the description below. But really it comes down to what kind of printer do you want. There's a resin printer and a filament printer, and one uses resin and UV cures layers, and one uses filament spools to extrude plastic in layers. So what you're gonna be looking at, if you're looking for detail parts or if you're working in N and Z scale, you really want to look at a resin printer. I personally have 2 of them, and I do almost all of my Etsy store printing with those resin printers. Now, you can also do HO scale details and O scale details and even G scale details with a resin printer. But if you're looking to do a lot of buildings in HO scale or O scale, you're really going to want to look at filament printers simply because they're going to have the size to be able to get what you want. The reason that you don't do that for N scale is you're not going to get as much detail as you typically would when you are talking about doing resin versus filament. But you kind of got to sacrifice that detail element to be able to get the size with HO and O scale. Now, if we're talking about 3D printers that I recommend, of course, there's always the Anycubic Photon. I run a couple of those. Elegoo Mars is another really great one for resin printers. And also companies are starting to come out with the new mono LCD screen. And what that is basically the screens that are used to project the UV light that cures the resin until now were regular screens, and they couldn't push as much light through. The mono screens allow a lot more light through, which allows the layers to cure a lot faster. The layers were curing at about 8 seconds was a typical standard time, and now you're looking at anywhere from 1 to 3 to 4 seconds. So you're really cutting the time in half, or by like 75% less time. So that's the exciting thing about if you see a monochromatic LCD screen as on the printer. And Elegoo and Anycubic have both come out with these. There's also coming out with larger format printers. The Elegoo company has the Elegoo Saturn, which might be out by the time you see this video. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to hit. I know they're going to want it out for Christmas. And Anycubic has the Mono X and the Photon X. And these are both roughly about 3 times the build volume as the original Anycubic Photon and Elegoo Mars. So it's something definitely worth checking out. If you're looking for a filament printer, a great starter one is the Creality Ender 3. Just keep in mind it's not one that's going to be able to crank out and churn stuff out. If you have a little bit more money to spend, I would definitely look at a Prusa Mini, but keep in mind that right now they have about an 8-week lead time on delivery. And if you've got a good chunk of money to spend on a printer, I would go with a Prusa Mark III. So that's everything that you can do with 3D printing and stuff to look at for model railroading this year during the holiday season. This video is brought to you with support from my patrons on Patreon. You can join my Patreon community for exclusive content. You can join for a monthly contribution of $1, $2, and the all-new $5 engineer level, which includes an exclusive digital model of the month that you can download and print yourself. A link to my Patreon page is in the description below. So what am I looking at for Christmas, and what have I sent to my friends and family for things that I want? I'm looking for some Micro Trains lines cars, specifically maybe some graffitied box cars. I'm also always looking for Norfolk Southern road switchers. Sometimes those are surprisingly hard to find, and I'm really excited about the Kato SD70Ms. I love the way that the M variant looks. I have an SD60M that I run on my layout, so I'm really excited about those SD70Ms. So that is my 2020 Christmas guide. Thank you guys so much for watching. Special thank you to all my patrons. They're listed right here. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that bell icon so that you don't miss any updates like this video. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy Railroading. Dashing through the snow in an SD70, freight cars up behind, rolling merrily, boxes, guns, and hoppers rolling down the line. What fun it is to drive the train and honk the horn all the time. I'm too weird for this.